The start of that session had been everything she had hoped for, but the middle part had left much to be desired. The ending, however, had made up for all of that. And how? She didn't know where they'd found the energy or the willpower, but those last screams, the thrashing of their bodies as their flesh melted away, it had been so exhilarating.
Cheerilee trembled and shook just remembering it. She attempted to walk in a straight line, but she just couldn't quite pull it off. Analyzing her own feelings, she realized the sensations rushing through her body weren't unlike those she had felt during one of the many sexual escapades she had taken part in during her wilder years. A little voice at the back of her conscious mind said she ought to be disturbed by this notion, but the dominant part of her psyche was adamant that it was completely normal. After all, those fillies had done unto her great injustice, and she was doing the entire community a favor by removing their toxic influence from the world. It was natural to feel good about a job well done.
Ponies in a vat of acid, sploosh.
It took the mare a few moments to realize she stopped walking. It was now leaning heavily against the nearby stage wall. She panted, drops of sweat went down her body. Taking a deep breath, she finally regained her composure, taking off to round the last corners, separating her from her destination. Almost at once, she spotted the only pony working in the backstage area, Snails.
The aquamarine maned colt with a golden coat was obvious to her presence.
Nope, exactly.
Or oblivious to her presence. Preoccupied as he was by the task of untangling several ropes from a knot.
He was taken aback by the sight of his teacher.
Yes, my teacher who's getting off on all the other little ponies that she's murdering viciously. Seeing him there gave Cheerilee mixed feelings about it all. On one hand, he was probably one of the least disruptive pupils in her class. Sure, he was another moron, but at least he had the decency not to interrupt her constantly. But on the other hand, his blatant lack of intelligence gave him an innocent demeanor that Cheerilee would have loved to break. But the play could only be so long, and there simply wasn't always enough time for her to do the things she really wanted to do.
Sequel bait.
With a sigh, she shook her head, resigning herself to her original plans for him. It'd be over far too fast for her tastes, but at least she had found some way of connecting him to the events of the play, even back here.
Hello, he called out sweetly. I think it's time for you to get into position.
He looked around in confusion. Oh, hey, Miss Cheerilee, he said dorkily. The ropes got stuck when I was just... he began, only to be cut off by Cheerilee as she started pushing him gently in the direction opposite the one she'd come from. And by the way, that's legitimately what he sounds like. I wasn't, yeah, so, okay.
Okay. I applaud your dedication to accuracy.
Now, Snails. You know full well what I told you. After the break, you need to hold the rope on the X, she said slowly, punctuating every word extra carefully.
On the X, Snails echoed.
Just a few meters ahead, some pony had indeed chalked a big white X on the stage floor, and a long sturdy rope hung down from the ceiling right above it. Snails went to stand on the mark without any hesitation, and took the end of the rope between his teeth. Cheerilee nodded approvingly at him, and his chest swelled up with pride. It almost made Cheerilee feel bad. Almost, but not quite, 'cause I'm a fucking asshole.
She put her ear against the thick wall separating the stage from the backstage area, trying to listen in on the scene. She could barely make out two ponies talking to each other, and even though she couldn't understand what they were saying, it did give her a rough idea of the current situation on the stage.
For the umpteenth time, she had to chastise herself for drawing out her fun too long and reveling in the aftermath of it, as she realized she only got there in the nick of time. If she kept that up, she'd mess up sooner or later, and she knew it. She made a mental note to adhere to her schedule more rigorously from here on out, comforted by the fact that she'd only almost gotten halfway through the show without any major incidents.
She closed her eyes as she listened to the sounds reaching through the wall. Her imagination created the scene inside of her head. She saw Sweetie Belle and Apple Bloom quarrel about what they should do next. She saw the king shoot down every single idea her last remaining night came up with. She saw her finally fulminating that enough was enough. She needed a good night's rest to mull it all over. She witnessed the night curse the sun for still being so high in the sky. She felt her reach for a rope that just appeared somewhere in the darkness above the stage. Watched her pull it down with all her might.
The sun fell from the sky. As it descended, the technician pony in the box above the tribunes doused most of the lights, while the orchestra started playing loudly. The King's Lament had begun. Cheerilee's eyes flew open as soon as she heard the first notes.
And remember, this is an elementary school play, and they have technicians and an orchestra, and yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
The world seemed to slow down into a crawl as the schoolteacher saw a huge spotlight, the sun, come crashing down from the ceiling, exactly above the X she had planted. Snails had spotted it as well, and he tugged on the rope in his mouth desperately, wondering why it didn't work that time, why it didn't allow him to gently let the spotlight down like it had before. His only conscious thought concerned not letting his teacher and everyone else down during those crucial moments, and so he kept on trying the rope. But it wouldn't budge, and the spotlight did not slow down.
What a weed. Moments before impact, both Cheerilee and Snails lowered their gaze and looked at each other in the eye. Cheerilee mouthed the word and broke into a smile, but the actual word itself was lost in the rush of music.
Snails just stared at her in confusion. Why was she smiling? Why was she just standing there? Why wasn't she... Wham.
Wham.
Make it big.
Wham.
The spotlight crashed down on the colt, small pieces of glass scattering over the floor and flying off into the air as the music hit a crescendo. To Cheerilee, it looked like a slow-motion explosion of tiny, shiny crystals erupted around the younger pony, temporarily hiding him from her eye. The combination of the orchestral music and the sudden cloud of tiny glass splinters was simply too much for Cheerilee's romantic soul to bear, and she shed a single tear at the beauty of it all.
The world finally kicked back into its usual gear as the tiny pieces of glass clattered onto the floor and the orchestra stopped playing. Finally, she could admire the fruits of her labor in the form of Snail's broken body lying underneath the huge spotlight, most of it having been crushed from the middle down. Even his upper torso...
Boy, he just wanted to do the best he could for his teacher and his class. He didn't deserve to die.
Even his... Well, he did, because he's slow.
This is a story about eugenics.
That's even worse, because now it's not his fault.
Even his upper torso had hundreds of tiny cuts and lacerations all over it. Although he didn't get directly hit by the falling object there, his normally golden coat was soaked red in many places already.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Snails was inferior, and the master ponies had to dominate the way. Cheerilee took a few steps forward to admire the way a small pool of blood flowed between the many fragments of glass on the floor, the wannabe crystals crunching noisily under her hooves. As she got closer to the spotlight, she started to notice the smell of burned flesh impregnating the air, and it seemed to get warmer with every step she took as well. She walked around to the other side of the spotlight and finally realized why.
Cheerilee had known that spotlights got very hot, of course, but she hadn't expected the thing to retain heat quite that long. Snails' entire backside was covered in blisters, singed fur, singed flesh and smoldering fur, and she noticed it was still spreading.
Of course, because it's not enough to crush him to death. I bet he's still alive, right?
With a high-pitched hissing sound, a patch of fur on Snail's back suddenly ignited. The small flame danced around playfully on the pony's back. Cheerilee looked at it with fascination, but not dare get any closer. She was already uncomfortably warm where she was standing, a meter or two away.
The teaching pony gasped in shock as Snails groaned and slowly opened an eye, looking around shakily, clearly still dazed. Cheerilee, I can't feel my legs. And what's that? What smells? He said as he craned his neck around to look over his shoulder.
He immediately saw the small but growing flame, and even he was smart enough to link it to the horrid smell that was assaulting his nostrils.
Fire! Cheerilee, fire! He yelled as he tried to crawl away, thrashing his upper body around wildly in an effort to get loose.
Because he was trapped underneath the spotlight, and with his hind legs out of order, the situation was hopeless from the outset. All he did with his erratic movements was fan the flames on even more. In a matter of seconds, various little flames were dancing across his body as he screamed at the hot tongues that licked his tender flesh. More blisters and boils appeared around the flames as they consumed everything within reach. The fire grew and grew, pulling more and more of his body into its deadly embrace, eager to feast, now that it had been set loose upon him.
The golden pony cried that as the...
I'm not really into dying right now. Can we just get through it?
Get like an immigrant song and put that note.
Yes.
The golden pony cried out as the ember tendrils quickly spread over his face, his vision immediately taken up almost entirely by the ferocious flames. The pain was excruciating, as if thousands of little critters were gnawing on him with hungering teeth, and all water was being drawn from his body at the same time.
Cheerilee watched on in awe as the spectacle unfolded before her eyes. She hadn't expected a show at this stage of her plan, but there it was, and it was breathtaking.
Of course it was.
She noted how several flames were already burning out, leaving his body charred black, cracks and fissures appearing in his dried-out flesh as Snails desperately thrashed about. He started hitting himself in the face with his hooves, trying his best to put out the flames burning there. Every hit left deep imprints in his weakened, boiling meat, but the flames would not be conquered. At most, they retreated for a single second, only to come back with a vengeance.
You think if he was hitting himself that hard, he would have knocked himself out?
And put him out of his misery.
Still screamed in agony once again and panted with the effort. As his life flashed before his eyes, loss of blood competing with the fire to see which one of them could kill him first. In the end, the fire won out as superheated air invaded the colt's lungs, singeing him on the inside. As his screams stopped, he wheezed for air, every breath like 1,000 daggers forced down his throat. His vision started to get blurry, and black spots sprung up everywhere. Suddenly, by chance, the flames moved away for a moment, and he could barely make out Cheerilee, just standing there, watching. And she was laughing.
The colt let out a dry, rasping sound as the flames blew back into his face, his eyesight giving out as the orange tongues dug in. If he had any strength left, he might have screamed the moment his eyes popped and melted away, flames immediately claiming his now empty sockets for themselves and licking the insides of his skull. But he was already far too gone.
So if this guy's on fire, wouldn't, like, the rest of the building now be on fire? Wouldn't there be lots of people panicking?
It would smell smoke. right?
Yeah.
They may not hear him under the stage, but is that... that smells like cooked children. Who's hungry?
Cheerilee coughed and sneezed a few times. The smell had gotten too much even for her tastes, but she continued to watching as the lifeless hunk, formerly known as Snails, burned out. A little voice back of her head asked her if she oughtn't find some water, in case anything else caught fire, but she was too mesmerized by the flames to care at that point. She finally snapped out of her fascination when the last of the flames died, leaving only a blackened form, roughly reminiscent of a pony in his
Now fuck it.
wake.
Panic hit her like a truck when she realized what she had just done. She drifted from her schedule mere moments after she promised herself not to just do that. She
Right.
mentally hit
She
herself
doesn't
over
care
the
that
head.
she killed a kid. She just cares that she missed her schedule. Sorry.
It's okay. She mentally hit herself over the head as she racked her brain trying to remember where she was supposed to have gone, instead of staring at the pretty fire. And the answer calmed her down quite a bit. Calmed her down quite a bit. She'll only have to skip leaving Snips's costume for the final act, which was different from the one he'd been wearing so far. In the right place for him. She shrugged. He could probably find it himself. That one time. He knew where she kept it. It wouldn't be a problem.
She laughed softly as she went down some stairs to get beneath the stage, and then headed for the prompt's corner. For a moment there she thought she'd really messed up. But there were only 3 left to go now, and she was firmly in control. Nothing would go wrong tonight. Nothing at all.
Wink, wink.
Nudge, nudge, not what I'm saying. Cheerilee settled.
Or shadowing. So, sorry.
It's okay. Cheerilee settled into the prompt's corner for the 3rd time that night. Her stomach rumbled and her throat was dry. In hindsight, she should probably have put some popcorn and water here, but it was far too late for that. With a sigh, she turned her attention to the stage and just let her mind wander to the rhythm of the story for a while.
Does hindsight mean you're looking with your brown eye? Okay.
I pooped to you, sir! Pooped to you!
No. My decision is final. You will have to go. The king screamed at Sir Altus?
Altruist, please. Whatever.
The king screamed at Sir A-hole, who returned his indignant glances with worried look.
But, my king, the royal guard, they...
Are needed to defend the capital. With tensions rising in east, we have no ponies to spare. You know this. A-hole. I trust in your capabilities. You will not fail me. The others have. If you do, I have to accept this cretin's challenge myself. The king sighed, the weight of the situation suddenly pressing heavily upon his shoulders.
A-hole, seeing his king's trouble etched on his face, fell silently and simply nodded. Without a further word, the knight turned around and walked away, leaving the confines of the royal court to head down to Reginald's part of the stage. The 2 fillies played their part so well, it was easy to forget that they were playing at all, even for cheer. Applebloom had shown an almost single-minded dedication to the script, and knowing it as thoroughly as she did obviously allowed her to concentrate on other aspects of acting. The words came on their own.
Sweetie Belle had been a bit less diligent, but she possessed a way with words and vocalization that made her a natural actor, although Cheerilee ventured to guess that singing was probably more her style. It was somewhat ironic that they'd both find their end doing something they were at least moderately competent at, while they were otherwise pretty much a waste of space. but Cheerilee was careful not to equate a single useful skill to being a worthwhile individual. What, Dave?
I'm calling Cheerilee Hitler because this is
Oh, okay.
this is a story about eugenics. Yeah.
Yeah. I think gassing someone is probably the only thing she doesn't do in this story.
Yet.
Well, there are the sequels. The play had fallen into a familiar pattern by that point. Sir A-hole being the third attempt to finally put a stop to Reginald's slide. Sweetie Belle, like all the other three before her, started to make her way to the other side of the stage. Is this like a really dull play for everybody watching?
Apparently, because the actors are in one scene and they disappear forever. So
Right, so it's like, okay, we talk to the king, says, go get this guy, they go, they fail. And then we're back to the king, go get this guy, they go, they fail. That's...
Well, remember, elementary school ponies, so I'm guessing this is...
That's why my parents didn't show up to the place. Although she clearly wasn't aiming to get to the mountain Scootaloo had disappeared into, or the house the other two could Instead, she resolutely headed for the forest at the end of the stage. That is to say, to the few cardboard trees that together gave the impression of a forest. The entire stage budget was used on the malicious contraptions below the stage, after all.
She quickly reached her destination, and as the lights above that part of the stage were turned on, it became clear that some pony was already waiting for Sir A-hole there. The audience wasn't very surprised when it became clear it was Reginald once again, but the bear trap around one of his back legs, which he couldn't seem to get out of, was certainly an unforeseen twist.
It's a twist.
There's a random fact. In the season 1, there's a affiliate character named Twist that apparently everyone in the fandom despises.
Oh.
And we don't know why.
Okay.
One of those odd things. Alright, go ahead. Sorry.
Do the people in the pony fandom look at a picture of Twist every single day for their hour of hate?
Someone wouldn't surprise me, yeah.
Okay.
We're an odd group. On second thought, let's not go to BronyCon. 'Tis a silly place.
But we already have a hoof. I don't want another hoof.
The knight approached carefully, but Reginald inevitably picked up on his hoof steps before too long and craned his neck to look around.
Seems at least one of us is in luck today. The great knight arriving during the villain's finest hour. You must be thrilled, he said bitterly, wincing slightly.
Altria said nothing for a few moments. Are you hurt? He finally asked.
The pony laughed and shook his head, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Oh no. This thing is very comfortable. Very comfortable.
I'll get you out, the knight responded as he stepped forward. But if you make one strange move...
He never got to finish his sentence as suddenly something caught around his hind legs as the world flipped upside down before this knight realized what was happening. He was hung down from the ceiling by his hooves to the audience. However, it appears as if he was hung from one of the cardboard trees.
Hey! Let me down!
Reginald cackled manically as he opened...
How did he cackle?
Manically?
Maniacally?
Same word, different pronunciation. As he opened the clamp around his leg, revealing it to be an impressive fake, but nothing more than that.
Can we take a moment? Can we take a moment to pause and appreciate how the fact that the elementary school play has a better plot than the stick it's in? Like, part of me is legitimately interested. Hey, what's going on here? What's the backstory of this king and his Sir A-hole and stuff?
And it's not a very good one either. But it is a better one than the plot that's going on. He casually strolled over to the captured knight and mockingly gave him a little foot, making Sweetie Belle swing slightly. Ah, dear Sir A-hole, is it not? Oh, not one for skulking about, are we? You have to be quite good not to be spotted by me anyway. That legend and kindness. Oh no, would it get you into the position you are now. He laughed again, giving the knight another push.
If you know what's good for you, Reginald, you'll come with me. The king is fed up, and whatever his next move may be, you'll probably not like it if you stick around here.
Sir A-hole replied, holding on to as much dignity as he could, while being upside down and swinging around.
I've heard the same tale spun twice before, good stallion. I'm quite sick of it by now, so if you don't mind, this'll be goodbye. Say hello to the beasts of the underworld for me. The sly sneered as he pulled one of the omnipresent hidden levers, one that had been concealed behind the tree. The floor opened and the rope was released all at once, sending the filly screaming down and now open hatch the floor. As the lights faded and Reginald disappeared off scene.
Does the author understand that the word omnipresent means there's always one there?
This author of this shit, who knows?
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, you could leave a review and ask. Just, don't be a dick about it. Just be like, hey, was you aware this word means this and not how you were trying to use it?
Yeah, that sounds like a dick. I don't think you can not sound like a dick. But
Well, then I guess apologize for sounding like a dick when you don't mean to be a dick. I don't know.
I mean to be a dick, but you're dumb.